Do you love building Power Platform solutions, but you hate having to write technical documentation? Well, Rene Modery has a solution for you. Stay tuned for the low-code revolution to see how you can automatically generate technical documentation for your Power Platform solutions. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Low Code Revolution. I'm your host, April Dunham, and today we're joined by Power Platform MVP, Rene Modery. Welcome to the show, Rene.
Hi, good evening, April.
Thanks. So Rene, you built a pretty amazing solutions to make building Power Platform documentation of our solutions much easier. So can you share a little bit first about yourself and then kind of what inspired you to build your solution here for technical documentation?
Absolutely. So my name is Rene Modery. I'm an Office 365 MVP since 2012, so quite a long time. Originally coming from the SharePoint Office 365 space, but obviously Office 365 being such a very big platform, it meant that at some point I just had to touch the Power Platform as well. Then partially because of personal reasons, because I wanted to do things, partially because of professional reasons, because from a professional point of view, I'm currently the Power Platform tech lead at a very large organization with around 140,000 employees globally. So there's a lot to do and a lot of things get done. And basically all that led also me to think about the things that I'm doing partially initially in a personal way, but also from a professional point of view, then led me to think whenever there's an app being built or flow being developed or something like that, or a solution which contains multiple of such components, part of it gets basically documented. So often you've got your manually created documentation that explains why you, for example, build a specific app, what's the purpose for it, the business case behind it, all those kind of things. Partially also document let's call it the technical aspect. So maybe which environment is the app located in, or which service accounts are getting used, which other systems are getting used, etc. But I didn't realize that, for example, a lot of times you build something and it's there, and when you have to revisit again after some time, you might have to think about, okay, how many screens were in that app, or what kind of variables are in there, what are they used for, those kind of things that really led me then to thinking about there should be an easier way to actually look at, for example, an app or a flow and figure out from a technical point of view what's happening inside it. And that's why I then thought, I'm going to develop a test app to see whether I can actually document all that that's inside the app or the flow, and see if I can actually then pull out relevant information, create some documentation for it. And that documentation should then ideally help me basically get a better understanding, for example, about the app that I build or the flow that I build, etc. And in a way, then the idea is not just looking at it afterwards, but potentially also, for example, handing it over to other people so that they can then see what's happening. Good use case, for example, from a professional point of view, is that one team builds an app, but another team is supposed to support it. So while there's some documentation that gets handed over, usually additional information about what's happening inside your solution is always valuable and helpful. And yeah, that's basically led me all then to developing PowerDocu to make sure then that this kind of documentation that is hopefully useful for people in different ways can get generated quite easily without spending hours of writing comments into a document or so, and always having to update it whenever there's a newer version of your app or flow, but rather simply said, run a small app, click a button, and you've got your updated documentation.
I love it. Yeah, I think you either love creating technical documentation or you're in the camp like me and you hate it. It's really cumbersome, but it's a necessary evil to have to create that documentation because it's going to help a lot of people along the way. I'm sure we've all been there. I know I have, where you're kind of coming in after the fact to have to update or manage a solution someone else has built. And in that case, if you don't have good technical documentation, it's just going to make that even harder. So I love that you've built something that kind of produces a content for us and makes it easier to get high quality technical documentation so that we can share it with others. So I'm really interested to see a demo of how this works. Can you show us?
Yes, absolutely. Let me just bring it up here on my screen. So what we have is the application itself. So it's relatively simple, as mentioned. I mean, idea is not that you have to configure a lot of things to get started. Rather, you download the app, you run it, you might initially then just, for example, update your connector icons so that the app can then use updated icons to use inside the documentation that gets generated. And that's about it. Next step for me is then to select the app flow solution I want to document. So the idea is then you've got your full solution, which contains then again multiple apps or flows, or you might have just exported an app or flow. Either way, basically you exported something and you then want to document it. All you need to do is then select what you want to document. So I'm just going to go ahead and document my full weather and my learning app, which are Flow and the Canvas app respectively. Just clicking open and it just gets processed. So PowerDocu checks what's inside those files that are provided. It discovered, oh, there's a flow in the first one, for example, started to create some graphs and a Word documentation. And then it was done with it, continued again with the next file, which is a Canvas app inside the solution, did the same thing again, documented it, and it's done. So that was quite fast. As you can see, was a, okay, here it's talking about 2-3 seconds. We've got 1 second down here, so it's really happening usually quite fast unless you've got a very complex Flow app. And just to show you then what actually gets generated. So what we then have here, I'm just switching over here, it generates the documentation in specific folders named after your app or solution or flow. So just looking, for example, at my Flow documentation, I mentioned it generates some graphs, which you can also see here in preview, but let me just open the Word document because they're actually also used in here. And basically the documentation, as mentioned, tries to get as much technical details out of the exported flow as possible. So it gives you some high-level information at the very top. So we see here, for example, what is actually getting used here right now. We get an overview of the flow itself. So that's really the top-level actions that are happening inside the flow. We jump into the connections that are used as part of the flow. That's obviously important, figuring out what else is the flow connecting to. While that is obviously visible in the when you open the flow, for example, in the Maker Studio, it's good to still have it documented separately here as well. And continuing down, you can see we document variables, which I think is really helpful, especially when you've built a long, big flow. You define one variable somewhere, which might be used in a lot of different locations, and you need to figure out where. So I realized, oh, that is quite helpful. I can see, for example, my calendar events is an object. I see how it is initialized. So you could say basically with empty fields, and I know where it is actually getting used in which actions inside my flow. More details about the trigger and the actions are also documented. So then we can see for each action in detail, again, what's happening. Sometimes that might be quite readable. So my compose action here, I can see, for example, we can see, oh, compose, it's actually setting some values here. Sometimes it's a bit more tricky to read, like get calendar view of events. Again, that's coming from the technical exported flow definition, you could say. So there's a lot of things in here usually which are not really easily readable. So here's a calendar ID, which doesn't mean much. I know for myself right now, that's my own personal calendar that it's using, but that's just in detail how it is here right now. Plus at the end, then we've got here the detailed image of the flow. So we not just see the high level of what's happening, but also we can see in much more detail. I'm just going to zoom in, for example, what's happening in each action, plus in each sub-action, let's call it. For example, I see my apply to each, everything that's happening inside here. And as you can see, that's really quite helpful as well. If you just want to say, oh, I want to take a screenshot of my flow, but my flow is huge, you could actually just use PowerDocu to generate this kind of output and then, I don't know, share it with others, print it, do whatever else with it. Plus, you see also here, again, the connector icon that is in use. I can see here it's using the calendar here, some other MSN Web API here in the bottom. We can see, additional connectors that can use. And just to show quickly how that flow actually looks like, that's actually a default flow template. Email me with a list of upcoming calendar events. And we can see here, again, variables getting initialized, first action, we've got our apply to each and everything else happening inside, same thing. And all that basically gets taken out of here and put into a Word document. And let me just quickly jump over to the other one that we documented, the app.
I'm just blown away, I have to say, like, while you're pulling the other one up, how much it was able to generate for us in just, what, 2 seconds there. I mean, the diagram alone, like you said, oftentimes our flows can get really complex.
Yeah.
Just having that screenshot there of the flow and then all of the formulas. I mean, this, I think, is important to know. This is a good backup, really, of your formula. So if anything happens to your flow, you accidentally make a change, you have that, composed formula that you can just copy in from your documentation now to fix if you accidentally delete something too. So
exactly, and especially when for example, your app or your flow gets much bigger. We're talking about relatively simple things here right now, but a friend of mine had a flow that had I forgot how many actions, but I think it was more than 200. So it even takes 30 to 60 seconds not just to generate the documentation, but having that big diagram showing her basically what's happening is extremely helpful, because when she opens the flow, it's obviously quite small, everything that she sees. Here she can zoom in, she can share it, and with other stakeholders potentially, etc. So there are many different use cases for it. Anyway, so coming to the the documentation for our Power App. This is a simple Power App that I developed for my kids, and the idea was every now and then I come back to it again to make some smaller changes, and sometimes I need to figure out again, okay, how did I actually do things, etc. And as you can see, it's similar to what we saw in the flow. There's some general information at the top, including some statistics, so I immediately see how simple or complex my app is right away. I can see 4 screens, it's not a lot, controls, good number, but not overly large, plus some additional information about variables, collections, data sources, resources. Next, then obviously my variables, so I can see what kind of global variables I use, plus where they are used. So really which control is using a specific variable and on which property. So I know where final score is used on the final score label, on the text property as an example, or on the onSelect properties here for info label and save score. Same thing then for the context variables, plus I'm going to scroll down, but yeah, also some information about the collections. We also have some information about data sources that we use. Again, there may not be a lot of information. For example, if I scroll down a bit more, we can see there's some information coming in from Dataverse. Doesn't tell me much here. In a future update, I hope to add maybe some additional information about Dataverse tables or so, but right now I'm focusing only on the app itself. Let's see what could be happening in the future. Resources, documenting obviously all the resources in the app, so that can be quite useful as well. Not just saying, oh, there are some images in there, but as you can see, they're getting embedded here as well, directly as well. So I've got 3 images, and now the nice thing is, what I always wanted to see is when I go into the Power Apps Maker Studio, I can see on the left-hand side my mini overview of the different screens, all the controls that are there, and I'm simply trying to replicate that experience here, so document it as well. So it's easy to see now what is on my home screen, what's on my play screen, etc. What kind of controls do I have here? So not just listing it, but also trying to make it as nice as possible in a way.
Yeah.
Good. And additionally here, what I have is not just one document, but I've also got a more detailed document. The difference between these two is for the current document, I'm stopping at, and I stopped 1 second late, forgot one important thing. One nice thing that I just added was some information about from which screen do you navigate to which other screen. So I know from my home screen, I only navigate to the quiz screen. From there, then you can see what else is happening. So most screens go back to the home screen, and the score screen would go back to the quiz screen, etc. So it's really just making it a bit clearer how do your different screens interact with each other.
I love it. That's really cool.
And the last thing is mentioned, so the detailed document contains everything that the normal document contains, plus it contains additional information about the controls. When I say additional information, that really means every single control, and we're just stopping to respond right now because it's just processing the big document, as you can see.
All the properties, okay.
All the properties get documented. The colors I document in a more colorful way, but everything else just gets more or less output directly. That's useful when you've got, for example, something like, items. I can see directly what I set here. I can easily then also search the document for certain, things that I know are somewhere in there. But the idea is then everything gets documented. That might sometimes be a lot. So depending on what we look at, if we scroll through it, we might sometimes see, I don't have anything specific here right now, but as you can see, it is always very detailed, sometimes maybe a bit too much. So if it's a default value, it's always in there. But the purpose is really to say, oh, for my current version of my app, this is basically how it was defined. And I could easily say, where do I use, for example, a specific color within my app, or where do I use certain other reference to another control? All this is then available in here as well, then, which might also be something I want to sometimes review and figure out later as well.
Well, that's amazing.
That's how it's working, simply said. So for solutions, again, if I add a whole solutions, it documents everything in the solution, well, everything meaning Canvas apps and flows, all individually, but other than that, really, that's the current state of things.
I love it. You know, from the Power Apps side, I love that first screen that you had where it broke down how many data sources and controls and everything that you had in the app, because oftentimes when we're doing maybe like a mini kind of app review, performance review of the app, you know, we're looking for things like that, like how many total data sources do you have, how many controls, to see if there's room for optimization. So your documentation just kind of provides that for you right off the bat at the front. So, I mean, so many great things, and even going as deep as to seeing all the properties of the control. I mean, just makes life so much easier to be able to have this documentation on hand, to give it to people that are going to be able to kind of move the solution and edit that going forward, and then have that as a backup too, which is a really great solution. Yeah. And so Rene, is that built, that's a console application? So did you build that in like C# or something like that then?
Right. In .NET build, so using C# for it, which also means it's hosted on GitHub. Just quickly open that, meaning everybody can look at the source code. Ideally, if people want to, I don't know, improve it, have some recommendations, some ideas, people can come in here. They could update the source code if they wanted to submit a pull request. They can add a discussion, add an issue item. So the idea is really, it's not just my own solution and I just hand out the final state of things, but if somebody sees something that can be improved in any way, for example, I'm happy to listen to other people to see, is there something that I didn't think of? Is there something that could be improved over time, etc.? And that we can then see whether that can happen in some other way, either through me or through somebody else in a way. Then, for example, we've just seen Word documents. Next step right now, which is currently in progress, is documenting, generating documentation that is Markdown based. So instead of just having a Word-based document, you've got Markdown-based documentation that you can then, for example, upload into GitHub, into Azure DevOps or other similar systems, so that you've got that web-based documentation available as well. Then.
I love it. That'll be great to have the Markdown version. And I love what you built, just because we talk a lot about Fusion development on the show and how code-first developers and low-code devs can work together. And this is just a great example of using a code-first tool to be able to help generate documentation for your low-code solution. So love it. Make sure you check out the PowerDocu GitHub there, download it, give it a test, see how it works for you. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Rene.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We'll see you next time on the Low Code Revolution.